Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are tearing down a massive hidden gap in our education system. Think about it. You went to school for years, right? You were taught the alphabet, vocabulary, grammar, sentence structure, the whole shebang. But nobody, literally not a single class, actually taught you how to read for long-term memory. We were all taught how to decode words on a page, sure, but definitely not how to architect that information so it actually stays in our brains permanently. Well, by the end of our time together today, you're going to possess the blueprint to completely transform your reading retention and activate what we can basically call your reading genius. So I want you to be totally honest with me for a second. Have you ever read a book, an article, or, even just a long chapter, closed it, and immediately realized you have absolutely no idea what you just read? It's an incredibly frustrating reality. You spend hours investing your valuable time trying to better yourself or learn something new, only to feel like that knowledge just slipped right through your fingers. Look, if that happens to you, you are definitely not alone. And more importantly, it is not a flaw in your intelligence. In fact, within just 24 hours of first exposing yourself to new information, your brain naturally discards half or even more than half of what you've just read. All that time spent, and bam, 50% of it is just gone by tomorrow. This phenomenon is just a biological default, and it actually has a name. It's called the forgetting curve. It is the exact opposite of the learning curve. See, when we read something for the very first time, our brain treats it like a rough first draft, and unless we intervene, it gets tossed right out with the mental trash. We're up against this really powerful forgetting curve every single time we open a book. If we just keep offloading our learning process to those default ways we were taught in school, we're gonna keep losing that knowledge. The only way out is to wake up and take continuous education into our own hands. Okay, let's dive into this. To defeat the forgetting curve, we need a concrete roadmap. So here are the 4 secret hacks of expert readers. 1. Curate your reading list. 2. Match your reading approach. 3. The power of reflection. And 4. Documenting your own insights. Taking a quick bird's eye view here, this isn't just a random list of tips. It's a sequential journey. It starts before you even open a book, with how you select it. Then it moves into how you physically interact with the pages. Then what you do the very moment you close the cover, and finally how you synthesize that knowledge to make it yours forever. Let's jump to the first step and see how this all builds. Step 1. Curating your reading list. This first hack is all about being fiercely intentional and moving away from what society tells you should be reading. It's incredibly captivating to walk into a bookstore and just grab something off a bestseller list or an editor's recommendation table, but really think about what you're doing there. You're following someone else's curated criteria. That passive habit of picking popular books often doesn't actually serve you, because popular books aren't always structured to deepen your specific wisdom or critical thinking. Contrast that with the active strategy of choosing material based on your unique values, your goals, and your personal mission. That's a real game changer. To curate effectively, you really need to ask yourself these highly intentional questions. First, what are your specific goals for reading right now? What exact knowledge gaps have you identified in your own life? What topics are genuinely the most inspiring to you in this moment? And probably most importantly, where do you see your future going, and how can this specific piece of education bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be? When your reading material aligns with your life purpose, it becomes incredibly inspirational and way easier to integrate into your permanent knowledge base. Step 2. Matching your reading approach. Once you have the right book in hand, you have to recognize that we cannot physically approach them all the exact same way. This brings us to what's known as the scholar's dilemma. On one side, we've got textbooks, encyclopedias, reference materials. These are packed with valuable data. Your goal here is usually just to answer a specific question. You definitely do not read these cover to cover unless, you want to fall asleep instantly. You spot read them. But on the other side, we have regular books centered around specialized topics. These are designed to deepen your wisdom and provide a really comprehensive overview through the author's progression of ideas. Now, these are the books you read cover to cover and chapter by chapter. Doing this requires a major shift in mindset. It forces you to actually set an intention before you read. If the author intended the book to be a quick reference, spot read it. If they intended a thematic journey, read it cover to cover. Though, let's be real, you don't necessarily have to painfully read every single word. Aligning your physical reading style with the book's specific purpose drastically improves your focus and your efficiency. You just stop wasting time trying to memorize a textbook, and you stop skimming a book that's meant for deep wisdom. Step 3. The absolute power of reflection. I really need you to lean in here because this is absolutely the most critical skill for long-term retention. Remember that forgetting curve we talked about earlier? Well, the only way to disrupt it is to provide your brain with what are called recollection exposures within that critical 24-hour window. Now, this does not mean rereading the text. Actually, scratch that. It means closing the book, waiting a short interval, maybe 30 minutes or an hour later, and simply thinking through the concepts in your mind. This deliberate mental reflection is the precise mechanism that transitions information from that fragile first draft right into your solid long-term memory.
But you might be wondering, how do you remember what to reflect on without just rereading it? Well, here is a fantastic, highly practical tip from expert readers. Use physical tabs. As you're reading a regular book, whenever you hit a concept, a principle, or a thought that sparks your critical thinking, stick a physical tab right on the edge of the page. This creates a literal roadmap of ideas. Then, 60 minutes after your reading session, during your regular thinking time, you don't reread the chapter. You just recall that tabbed concept and let your mind process and extrapolate it further. It's brilliant.
Which brings us to step 4, documenting your own insights.
Exactly how we record what we've just processed is what ultimately cements it permanently into our brains. Now, the school method is what we were pretty much all conditioned to do. A teacher spoke, or we opened a textbook, and we basically copy-pasted their exact words onto our notepad. The expert method turns that entirely upside down. Experts don't copy the text. They write down their own thoughts and insights that they naturally develop during that period of reflection we just talked about. The whole concept is captured perfectly here. Take notes on your thoughts, not the text, because it is incredibly difficult to remember someone else's words verbatim. Think about how true that is. When you write down what the author said, those are their words, not yours. But when you write down the insights that you actively developed in your own mind, that knowledge becomes a part of you. You can fill pages and pages with your own fully developed insights, making sure you never run out of something valuable and profound to say. So we've covered the architect's blueprint together today. Curating with intention, matching your reading approach, prioritizing reflection to finally beat that forgetting curve, and documenting your own thoughts. But knowing a thing is definitely not the same as being able to do that thing. So I want to leave you with this provocative question. What changes will you make to the way you read today? Which of these 4 hacks are you going to implement right now, the very next time you open a book, so you can stop forgetting and start building your reading genius? It's time to take education into your own hands and transform your lifelong learning journey starting today.